So you know, Vicki, you've got an advantage over me and the rest of the guys in the office in your selling. You can sleep with your customers. What? I had my dream job when I graduated from college, selling computers for a global computer company. I'd spent 9 months training at headquarters, sales training, product training, and I was so ready to go out in the field and sell these computers. When I got out to the field office, however, that was the additional training my district manager provided for me. Unfortunately, that was not the worst part of the work environment. I couldn't stay late at night because after the receptionist left, if I was the only woman in the office, there were some men in the office that would grope me. I called HR, and they said there was nothing they could do. Now, there's 2 rules of early career development. I had to break one of them. I had to leave that job when I didn't have another job waiting for me. And maybe that's why I hurried too quickly into the next job. It seemed like a great fit. Computer support sales within an insurance company, safe, secure, used my knowledge, skills, and abilities. Soon I was crying on my way to work. It was an environment where I wasn't trusted. I wasn't trusted to know when to go to work, to know what I needed. This company, to let us know when it was time to start work, would play music. And then the music would shut off at 8 o'clock, and we'd all rush to our seats, and the supervisor would walk around with a checklist, letting us know who was in their seats, demerits for those that were late. In this environment of lack and trust, I wasn't productive. I wasn't happy. And yet, I thought, I can't break the second rule of early career development, becoming a job hopper. I'd never be employed again. And so I stayed. I stayed much too long in an organization without the respect and the trust, the appreciation that I deserved. I began to think, well, maybe that's what all organizations are like. Maybe that's why it's called work. Once I started studying organizational cultures, what I learned is some survey data from Conference Board said 54% of Americans are unhappy in their work. And they're unhappy in their work not because they don't get enough money. I mean, they'd always like more money. But they're unhappy in their work because of the work environment. The work environment isn't an environment where they feel valued. When I was getting my Ph.D., I worked with Ed Lawler, and his research demonstrated the link between happy employees, satisfied employees. If you had happy, satisfied employees, those employees were committed to your organization's success. They aligned behind the organization's goals. And when employees did this, employees were more productive and the organization was more successful. So the next research question then is, what makes a happy employee? How do you create a satisfied employee? And there's a lot of researchers working on this question. Peter Drucker was an early researcher. He realized through his research that respect and trust, accountability were critical if an employee was going to be satisfied. Emotional intelligence, Goleman, taught us that empathy is an absolutely critical component to effective leadership. Jim Collins, in Good to Great, Level 5 Leadership, Humility and Will. And right now, Gretchen Spreitzer and her team at University of Michigan are looking into positive psychology. All of these researchers are picking up different factors that help us to understand employee satisfaction. And yet, as I studied, I thought, what's the harmonizing vision between these different pieces? What's the overarching concept that would help us understand what these different factors meant. And as I studied, I realized that the integrating factor was kindness. As I worked then with graduate students and coached executives and consulted with managers, I started asking them, so would you like to be known as a kind manager? And almost to a person, they said, oh, no, no, no. Kindness is nice. Kindness is polite. Kindness is weak, is what they were saying. And yet, if we go back 2,500 years, what Aristotle taught us is kindness is a basic human virtue that leads to greatness. Kindness, as seen through respect and accountability and honesty, drives commitment to an organization's goals. Kindness, as seen with generosity, forgiveness, empathy, creates a connection within the employees and between leaders. And so it's this combination of connection and commitment that then is going to drive that greatness that Aristotle wrote about so long ago. And the interesting thing is, we're taught these same basic foundations for success in kindergarten. So if we have known about kindness and the power of kindness and its contribution to our being great, to our success, and how when we come together with kindness, we can create a competitive advantage, why aren't we embracing kindness? To overcome this idea that kindness is weak, I looked at a couple of examples. The first example is an individual who's rather infamous for his lack of kindness as a leader. Bobby Knight, the general he liked to be called, was basketball coach at Indiana University. Bobby Knight won hundreds of basketball games, 3 national titles. Bobby Knight, rather than leading with kindness, led with fear. And fear will allow you to win games. Bobby Knight would interact with his players in such egregious manners. One player said he counted the number of times he threw a chair during practice 53 times in one practice before he threw it at the refs in this picture. Bobby Knight hit a player because the player called him Bobby Knight instead of Coach Knight or Mr. Knight. Bobby Knight choked a player because he was unhappy with that player's performance. Bobby Knight walked behind a black player and pretended to whip him. Fear as a leader can allow you to win games in the short run. But Bobby Knight was fired from Indiana University. In long-term success, Bobby Knight is not going to be remembered for the games he won. He's going to be remembered for his unkindness as a coach. So contrast Bobby Knight's leadership style to Coach John Wooden. I had the amazing fortune to spend an afternoon with Coach Wooden in his condominium, just me, my son Kevin, Mark Eaton, Mark's son Doug. We were there to interview Coach Wooden about a book on mentorship. In that moment, we immediately felt the power of Coach Wooden's strength and his leadership and his kindness. Coach John Wooden has been noted by ESPN and Sports Illustrated as the most revered coach in the history of sports. Coach Wooden at UCLA, over the course of 10 seasons, over the course of 12 seasons, won 10 championships, 7 in a row, a record that's likely never to be broken. Coach Wooden did this because he based his leadership on what he called the pyramid of success. And if you look at his pyramid of success, you will see all of the elements of kindness built into that pyramid of success. And because of Coach Wooden's kind leadership, he held his players accountable. Those players were expected to show up 100%, give 100% effort at every practice, at every game, in every class, in every aspect of their life. And because of the inspiration that Coach brought out, they did this willingly, with honor. Perhaps the most impactful example of Coach Wooden's leadership was the year that he was coaching at Indiana State. And his team was ranked #1 in the country and invited to Madison Square Garden for the championship game. Coach Wooden refused to go to that game because one of his players was black. Not one of his key players, but one of his players. And he said, if all of my players can't go, we will not go to the tournament. And the #1 team in the nation did not play that year. The next year, Indiana State won again. #1 team, again. They came and said, Coach Wooden, your black player can come and play at Madison Square Gardens. Will you come to the tournament? That's strong leadership. That's kind leadership. I finally got up the courage to leave the second job where I wasn't trusted. I broke that second rule of career, never working again, and I went to work in a startup organization. I landed in an organization where I felt appreciated, where I was respected, where I was trusted to do what was best for the organization, to give 100% of my effort on behalf of that organization. I was never happier at work. I never worked harder than I did at that job. I earned less than I had before. And yet, as a satisfied employee, I was committed to that organization's success. I was committed to the organizational goals. And in that way, because that was instilled in all of us employees, we were incredibly productive. We were incredibly successful. The organization established a competitive advantage because they brought out the best in all of their employees. Digital Systems International grew from 30 employees to 600. We went through an IPO. We were acquired by AT&T. Still today, I'm great friends with many of the individuals I worked with at Digital Systems. Another example is, in the organizational sense, is Walmart. Now, it might surprise you that I'm using Walmart as an example of a kind organization. Walmart, under the leadership of Sam Walton, was actually a kind organization. Sam Walton led in the same way Coach Wooden did by basing his leadership on 10 basic principles that, again, aligned with Aristotle's view of what kindness is. Sam Walton trusted his employees. When Walmart did well, employees shared in that success. Sam Walton didn't look at his employees as workers. He looked at them as associates and involved them in the management and trusted them to do the right thing for the organization. And in this way, Walmart grew from a small 5 and dime store on a corner in Rogers, Arkansas, to an organization with thousands of stores around the world, over $50 billion in sales. Walmart overtook Sears as the largest retailer in the world under Sam Walton's leadership. When Sam Walton died in 1992, Walmart was turned over to his kids. His kids inherited the company. And his kids chose not to continue Sam Walton's leadership style. Instead, they adopted a leadership style where business decisions were based on greed. Business decisions were made based on what would give them the most money. And as a result, sales at Walmart continue to decline. The business decisions that hurt Walmart's sales growth, most notably, was instead of using full-time employees, those employees were made part-time employees so the organization could save on all of the benefit costs. There was a lawsuit where employees won because they had been locked in a warehouse all night, somehow thinking that if they couldn't leave the warehouse, they would be more effective and more efficient. This kind of mean, disrespectful, unkind leadership has brought Walmart to the point where Goldman Sachs has projected that Walmart will decline and cease to exist. You know, Aristotle taught us 2,500 years ago what it meant to be great, how kindness can lead a path to greatness. And it's the same lesson we learned in kindergarten. So if you are wondering how you might become more successful, establish a competitive advantage for yourself, you might want to think about asking a kindergartner. At least I hope that you will join with me in adopting the pledge of kindness. I pledge to myself on this very day to try to be kind in every way. To every person, big or small, I will help them if they fall. When I love myself and others too, that's the best that I can do. Thank you.